Minnesota sports fans, we know all too well how it feels to sign up for a lifetime of purple pain. Welcome to Before We Die with Jesse and Thor on Purple Daily and Score North.
What's going on, everybody? This is Purple Daily's Before We Die on Score North. I'm Jesse Pierce, usually found at a rink or in some sort of cold environment, sometimes jumping into snow in my swimsuits. I know you guys like that one, Thor and Ross, so thank you for your support there and me being a crazy person. I am extra crazy for the Minnesota Vikings this year, now hosting this show with my dear friends, Thor Nystrom down there, who is not very good at his job, but also very good at his job. I don't know how to better say that, Thor. Would you agree, disagree? I mean, we'll get to Thor's hammers later and the leader of the board, but really, I mean, you're doing your best Vikings impression by kind of falling down the past couple weeks in your own game.
I'm very good at picking college football winners, and I've proven this year I'm not so good at picking NFL props. And Jesse, you've done pretty well, and you've rubbed it in every single week.
So. Yeah, I will continue to do so. I'm excited for the trophy that you guys are going to have to buy me because that should be on the list.
I'm gonna give you some shares to be a Vikings owner. I'm gonna give you 10,000 shares.
Perfect. That's all I want.
We should come up with some sort of trophy.
Right?
Good call,
so.
Jesse.
Thank you. That's what I do. Unless Ross comes and surpasses me. He's pulling a Green Bay Packers, if you will, as Thor had pointed out this morning. He's coming in right behind Thor, or he passed Thor. God, you're right behind me now.
Thor's in the dust. Thor right now is basically the Chicago Bears of Thor's hammers.
There you go. And that leads to my perfect segue. Thank you, Ross. Minnesota Vikings visit the Chicago Bears. Vikings obviously 12-4, visiting the lowly 3-13 Bears, who are doing everything they can to tank. It seems they're not playing Justin Fields, their quarterback, their franchise quarterback, because he is, quote, injured with the hip or has a hip injury that he is not playing, which very well could be the case. And I get being safe, but it just has that air of, okay, they want the 1 or 2 pick in the NFL draft. So Nathan Peterman gets the start. Do you guys think that Chicago is doing this intentionally? Do they want to lose this game? Are they going to really do whatever they can to hand a victory to Minnesota this Sunday?
1,000%. 1,000%. If the Bears have to do what the Mud Dogs opponent in the Bourbon Bowl did and kneel the ball every single snap to lose this game, they will do it. And they should do it. They have every incentive in the world to lose this game. And the Houston Texans, the one team that's a half a game ahead of them right now because the Houston Texans had a bye, they're absolutely dumb enough to beat the Colts on Sunday, which would propel the Bears into the number 1 slot if indeed they do lose to the Vikings. So the Bears are going to lay down for this one.
And we still don't know the Viking side of this coin. KOC, I almost said Sean O'Connell. KOC has been pretty close to the vest on what he's going to do, but I gotta feel like there's going to be a fair amount of players that won't be playing, especially after the litany of injuries that the Minnesota Vikings had this past week in Green Bay. I think it'll be interesting. So I thought about this, okay? Justin Fields plays and the Vikings lose. Okay, not great, but it is what it is, right? If the Vikings play most of their starters. Imagine if the Vikings play most of their starters and lose to Nathan Peterman. I don't think for psyche you can do that. So if I'm KOC, I think you need to sit or rest as many players as possible. Play some if you want, but don't play them all the way through. I think we're going to see a battle of second teamers on Sunday, even though the Vikings can technically still get the number 2 seed. At this point, it seems unlikely, and if you end up being gifted the number 2 seed, great, smile and take it. But at this point, get to the playoffs as healthy as possible.
As Ross mentioned, Minnesota can move into that number 2 spot if they win and San Francisco loses to the Arizona Cardinals, which does not seem very likely the way that San Fran is playing and the way that the Cardinals are being the Cardinals. Ross also mentioned the injuries. Brian O'Neill partially tore his Achilles last week in Green Bay. They have practice squad insurance by signing Bobby Evans, and tackle Blake Brendel might be ready for the playoffs. He tore his MCL back against the Lions. So it looks like probably Oliudo replaces O'Neill this week. How do you think he might do? I just like saying his name as well. Can I just admit that? So.
Not well. Yeah. We've seen Oliudo before. But the only thing you can say for it is Oliudo is a natural tackle, not a natural guard, and he's particularly bad at guard. But we've seen enough of that guy at this point to know he probably shouldn't be on the field, and we got to be nervous if he is on the field. that we talked about this all season, and it's tough, right? At the end of the year, what's gone on here. The Vikings, the one thing that the cap crunch did to them, they did not have very good depth. And at a couple positions, it was that problem was acute. And you could not afford cluster injuries at those positions. Again, this is not in the moment or hindsight, whatever. It was offensive line and cornerback. We talked about it all season. Now Brian O'Neill's out. They're saying that Brandel can come back in the playoffs. I don't think he's going to come back. Bradbury's out. They're saying he could come back in the playoffs. I don't think you're going to see Bradbury again. And then Schlottman's out too. All those guys are out. So, yeah, I mean, right now it's looking like the left side of the line is intact. You got Darrison, you got Cleveland. After that, it gets really ugly going left to right. Reed, Ingram, Udo. Oh, boy. I mean, no matter who you're going up against in the first round, that's a problem. I'm still hoping for the Giants matchup in the first round. That's why, I don't want the 2 seed, because it's the best opportunity the Vikings have to win a playoff game. But this is bad. This is really bad. It's the one thing that couldn't happen, and it happened.
Yeah, and Thor, to your point, it's really bad. And then you talk about playing the Giants because that's the most opportunistic matchup for the Minnesota Vikings. And it's a way to obviously extend the season, give everybody else another week. But even if they get another week, are guys like Brandel, not Brendel, going to play? Will Garrett Bradbury be able to play? And again, even if these guys can play, Bradbury's a little bit different. I think he's been better than we all expected him to be, especially with how much time we talked about him in the preseason. So I think if he came back, that's an immediate upgrade. Anybody else who comes back, they're not nearly on the level of the players they're replacing. Now, follow me here. They might be better than the injury replacements they're replacing, but they're not better than the starters. So that's going to be a pretty massive problem in the playoffs, especially if you move to the Final Four of the NFC. When you project forward, the defenses you're going to be facing, it's not a good sign. But again, this is the beauty of sports. Anything can happen. Put together a good game plan offensively, which I still don't 100% trust because we've seen clunkers of games and clunkers in games. But I do overall trust the head coach that he can come up with some offensive plan to scheme around it. But it's really tough to scheme around 3/5 of your offensive line being a mash unit.
I mean, looking at this week matchup in particular, is it more than a 1-score game? I'm going to dive into some numbers. I'm going to nerd out. Actually, I'm going to let Thor nerd out with these numbers. But do you think the game against Chicago should be, I mean, we say it every week, and every week it's not. It's a 1-score game, which has absolutely boggled the minds of analysts and statisticians across the NFL. So are they going to beat Chicago by more than a score?
Well, even with, even with the right side of the offensive line in the straits that it's in, if the Vikings were going for this game, and if they were like everything was full go or whatever, they could pick the score. They could literally pick the score. That's not what I would advocate for. I would rest most of the starters. And we talked about this in the episode earlier this week. I would use this as your quasi-bye. Now, it seems as though O'Connell wants to play the starters. That's the indications that we've been given, but not even Las Vegas, which knows thoughts in coaches' heads before they even know it. They don't even know what people are going to do. They for Thor's hammers. They don't have player props out there for most of the games, including this one, because Vegas doesn't know who's going to be playing, how much they're going to be playing, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a long laundry list of Vikings that I would either partially rest, give partial snaps to, or outright sit them in this game. Zadarius Smith, Adam Thielen, Cook, Tomlinson, Harrison Smith, Patrick Peterson, Kendricks. Heck, I would sit Cousins too.
I think you play Kirk for a quarter and then
or do
see
that.
What's what. You know what I mean? I don't think you keep him. There's no way you play him the entire game.
The one thing I do want, though, this is the one area where I'd risk it. I just want to pound Jefferson with targets to get him to that record. At this point, after last week, the debacle last week, and Jair Alexander, shut up. That wasn't you. Okay. You had helped the whole game, Jair. Enough with that. But because of that game, Jefferson is he was on pace before. Now he's sort of fallen off it. He needs 200 and some yards or whatever. But the Bears, you look at all the inactives that they have, their secondary is going to be absolutely brutal. So you could do the Randy ratio with Jefferson in one game and try to get him over 200 and get to that record.
I think what I want to know very quickly, I want to monitor Cleatgate. Are we going to have players refusing to wear the 7-stud cleats again after being told to wear them? I want to know what that looks like this weekend, because I can't imagine the Soldier Field turf will be, or grass, whatever we want to call it, will be any better. It will likely be worse than what was at Lambeau Field. So that's what I'm monitoring.
I mean, yeah, they can go practice snowshoeing outside. I'm sure I got a driveway that needs shoveling as well. No, I told you guys, I was going to nerd out. So, and this is not taking anything away from the Minnesota Vikings. I will say that again for those in the back that seem to forget, not hear me. This is not taking away from the Minnesota Vikings, their wins, their season. It's just been such a crazy anomaly, correct? Yes, I think we can all agree on that. So, their DVOA is basically breaking modern day NFL football with the way that their record has played out, right? It ranks 28th in the NFL. They have been outscored and outgained this season with a minus 19-point differential. And now this, per ESPN, since the 1970 NFL merger, the range of winning percentages in one-score games among the NFL's 32 teams is .407 to .570. You can look at the 2003 Panthers, who still made it onto the Super Bowl, and they lost by one score, coincidentally. But there has not been another team like the Minnesota Vikings who have proven the way that they have played this year to be sustainable throughout the playoffs. I pose this question to you, gentlemen. How do you feel about that? Like, again, it's not taking away from what the Vikings have done this season. It's still been so much fun. But is there any more confidence heading into the playoffs than we've had all year? Each week, I feel like we're just repeating ourselves and we're banging our head against the wall because it's like, what do we make of this team? But the stats show that they shouldn't be this good and they shouldn't make it to a Super Bowl. But do we believe?
Well, there's nuance in there, right? Like they have a good offense. They have a terrible defense. The coaching is usually pretty good, especially situationally. And we saw, this season, all the one possession games they get into, they're winning. But in particular, when those cluster injuries started to hit in the secondary and the offensive line, they would get whipped in some of these games, and then the yardage thing would go the other way, and the scoring differential would go the other way. To answer the question, the Vikings at full strength have a puncher's chance against anybody. They beat the Bills in Buffalo. They had a bunch of good performances. They pulled out all these different games. But, I mean, the Vikings, where they're at now, I mean, what are you going to say? With the right side of their offensive line the way it is, Cousins already getting hit the way that he's been hit this season, it's just you're going into battle without half your army. You just toss up your hands. It's tough.
It's also not the perfect analogy, but to steal the old, it's not necessarily the Herm Edwards line. You play to win the game, right? All these guys are going to try and do that. They're out looking to keep their jobs, or they're out looking for their next jobs, no matter who's on the field. There's a degree of unpredictability in sports. I think that you can look at all the stats in the world, but I think the unpredictability explains how the Minnesota Vikings are sitting here 12-4 after 16 weeks or 16 games, when I think a lot of us can objectively look at them and say, yeah, you are what your record says you are. You're 12-4. Doesn't mean we believe it. Doesn't mean you're necessarily a great 12-4. However, I would say this, a comparison that I'll draw. You can go back now about 2 months and look at 4 or 5 games at the Texas Christian University football schedule. And you can make a case they should have lost 3, 4, maybe 5 times in the back half of their season. Guess what? They didn't. They're playing for a national championship game they're playing for a national championship on Monday night. Do I think they're going to win? No, I think they'll lose by 120. But they're going to be in the national championship game. That same opportunity is being afforded to the Minnesota Vikings and 6 other teams in the NFC and 7 teams in the AFC. Truly anything can happen. So I'm willing to keep enjoying the ride. Again, don't necessarily believe in the ride. Don't trust the ride. I think the seat belts are unsafe. I'm not sure about the cart on these tracks. I don't know if it's going to stay on, but I'll enjoy it while I'm here.
I hate everything about TCU for what they did to Iowa State back in November. We don't need to talk about that, but I'm just saying. I did also like their trolling of Michigan, however, on all the social media channels that their players did. It was kind of funny, but I agree. I hope they get bent over in not the good way. Let's talk about the defense I know, I'm sorry. I mean it. It was a bad game against Iowa State. I didn't like it. Let's talk more about the defense because that's what we like to criticize the most. Ross, you brought up a good point in our production meeting, talking about, is it really Ed Donatel's fault? Are these defensive problems his fault? Well, yes, he is in charge of the systems. He's in charge of setting them up. However, 2 years in a row, different coordinators, different systems, same players with very similar production and output. 2021 total passing yards, they finished 28th. In 2022, they're currently 31. In 2021, total rushing yards, they finished 26th. Currently this year, they're at 20. What do you guys take of that? Ross, I want you to take it away because I know this is your podium stance. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so I think it's, again, like a lot of questions that I pose, I think you can look at it at two ways. The first way is I don't really believe that it is all his fault. I think I've said numerous times on this podcast and even other shows that I've been a part of, you can only work with what you have, okay? And who are the best defensive players on this team? Danielle Hunter, Za'Darius Smith, Eric Kendricks, Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
I always want to call him George Harrison for some reason. I don't know why. Probably because I'm always listening to the Beatles. They're still good players. They're not what they used to be. And I think even with Za'Darius Smith and Danielle Hunter, we've seen it for the better part of the last month and a half. They don't look as fresh or as good as they did at the beginning of the year. And that just happens with older players. The run game, that's easy to explain. Why are they better this year than last year? It's because teams aren't attempting to run as much because they know they don't have to. So that stat in itself is skewed. So I don't think it's all on Ed in that part. He can only work with what he has, and injuries have lined up on defense too with the limited defensive players that he has anyways. What I would say though, and again, this is a rehashed talking point that we've talked about before, Calvin O'Connell, Bum Phillips' kid, who I'm not even sure how much he is involved in the offense. I still think it's a lot more KOC than anything. And Ed Donatel were brought in to win now. They weren't brought in to rebuild. They were brought in to essentially reload and compete for a championship right now. So even though this is the hand that Ed Donatel was dealt, and these are the players that he was dealt, guess what, Ed? You gotta take your little piece of cheese at the state fair or butter, and you gotta mold it into something beautiful. And at this point, you haven't done that. So that part is on him. And I hate to say that because I don't think he's working with a full deck of cards, but it is what it is. This entire staff, even the GM, they were brought in to win now. And what Ed Donatel's defense is doing is hurting the win now. Especially, think about this, what Thor just talked about, all the injuries on offense. What would help you overcome those against really good teams and playoff teams? A solid defense that can shut other people down.
I knew that answer.
This defense is more than likely incapable of that. And to a degree, that falls on Ed Donatel.
Yep. Thor?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, it's half and half, right? This is another one where it requires nuance. He didn't have the personnel to have like a dominant defense. They weren't going to be above average, but we talked before the season, like in August, about how they didn't need to be in the top 10 of the NFL in defense. They just had to get up to middle of the pack. I don't think that was too much to ask. Apparently it was. The thing that has frustrated me about Donatel, it's not that he doesn't have the fifth ranked, defense in the NFL or the eighth ranked defense in the NFL. It's that they're so dog poop and there's no adjustments. Like yes,
called the S poop.
Called the S poop.
Yes, the Bill Parcells thing. He wasn't able to buy the he had to cook the meal, but he wasn't able to buy the groceries. But yeah, I mean, you had the personnel that you had. You can make adjustments, man. And this is the frustration that we talked about all season. It's like, in these moments where they're like asking him in the post game, like, Ed, what went on there? Like, why weren't you changing as the game went on? And like, you have, on the short pass, you have the guys playing 10 yards off. And when the other team's going to throw down the field, you have the cornerbacks playing up. And when they're going to run, you have the thin boxes with the 3-man fronts, like, and he's like, oh, it's the system, we stay with the system. And, we just hope the players will start to execute it. And it's like, no, Ed, you have autonomy too. You have autonomy too. You're the one that's calling the plays, right? You're the one that's directing the army. You can move the guys around. You can make adjustments. And he's being out schemed every single game. It's easy for the other coaches to pick on Viking personnel on defense. They shouldn't be able to pick on the defensive play caller too. that's on a Donatello.
Yeah.
Well, I do think this, in fairness, to add cheap shot alert, they did try doing some things differently against Green Bay. At one point, they tried playing with 10 defenders and 12 defenders. So they did at least try doing that. So we can't say he doesn't try new things or do things differently.
Right. No,
True.
I think you do. You have to. I think a coach always gets the blame, fair or not fair, but that's just how it goes. Thor, do you feel responsible for the reason that you're underperforming in Thor's hammers? Is that what you'll take that responsibility, that accountability, or are you going to push that blame onto other players?
I'm going to push that onto Donatello. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have my system, and if it's not working, it's someone else's fault. And in this case,
Thor's hammers.
On there, I'm sorry, buddy.
No, here we go. So, as I mentioned before, unfortunately.
Yeah, let's get that out. Let's hold that for a minute. There you go. Yeah, look at that.
Full disclosure, I didn't know how to factor in the tie, so I just didn't include it. It's up there to see it, but it's not part of the. I don't think, does it get included? I don't even know how that works.
Yeah, it's it gets included. But this week we don't have the player prop numbers because I don't know if the books are going to release them at all for some of these games where it's like they don't know who's going to play and how much they're going to play or whatever. But at least as of Thursday afternoon when we're recording this, they do not have the individual player props up for Vikings Bears. So we're gonna audible this one and pick a couple of the other relevant games to the Vikings instead of the individual player props. Then we'll get to the Vikings Bears line. So we're going to begin with the 49ers and Cardinals game, which the NFL picked an interesting time to schedule this one. I have some more thoughts on that during the Before We Die segment. We have 49ers minus 14 at home against the Cardinals. Jesse, who you like in that one?
Taking the 49ers.
Okay.
What are the Cardinals starting this week at quarterback? Is it David Blau again?
I think they're just going to other practice squads and every week. It's like, it's like Oprah. You get to start. You get to start.
I got a call from Arizona. Do you think that's what that was about?
Could be.
You should take it.
Yeah. Who have they had this year? Murray, McCoy, McSorley,
David Blau.
Wow, they need to go find another quarterback with an M. It's really
Josh Rosen. They took our last quarterback off that practice squad. They could run it back with Josh Rosen. That's a good story.
Mm-hmm.
We still have the Rosen one, right? He's still on the practice squad.
But they can just pluck him if they want.
I don't like this. What did you took? You took the Niners?
I took the Niners. It's Brock Purdy. I'm going to always take Brock Purdy.
I'm running out of chances to make up ground. I'll take the Cardinals. Hopefully it's a backdoor cover of some sorts.
I'm also going to take the Cardinals. I don't trust Cliff, obviously, and this is going to be Cliff's last game as an NFL head coach. But let's just hope that they have a little fight, and we're going to fade Jesse. Okay.
Geez, if Thor's taking the Cardinals, maybe I have to go back to the Niners.
I know, it hasn't worked out.
I'll stay with the Cardinals.
All right, next one. Eagles minus 14 hosting the Giants. Jesse, who you like?
I'm going to take the Giants.
Okay.
Are the Giants stuck at 6? They're stuck at 6, right?
I think so.
I think they're stuck.
Yeah, I'll take the Eagles.
The Eagles can fall out of 1 if like 3 things happen, I think, right? Like if they I think they could. They're not stuck at 1. I think they could fall out of 1. Am I correct on that?
Well, they're
again, like 3 things have to happen. Like there's a bunch of like things that would, but they don't even have 1 locked.
Yeah, the 49ers are 1 game behind them. Obviously the Vikings are too, but it'll be interesting if we ran into a 3-way tie scenario. But I'm not sure if the Giants will help facilitate that, but they will help facilitate the Vikings getting around to.
And I also don't think the Giants are going to play everybody for the entire game either if they're stuck at 6. So I'll take the Eagles.
Well, they got to play the mighty Minnesota Vikings the next week, so who can blame them? The next game, Packers minus 4.5 hosting the Lions. Jesse, who you got?
I'm going to take the Packers.
Okay.
Oh, Ross. Packers all the way, and I think you and I are going to have similar Before We Dies. But this is so. Look, I've been telling you guys for a month, unfortunately, that the Packers are making the playoffs, and this is the culmination of it. So
the NFL wants it.
Yeah,
100%.
I have strong thoughts on the scheduling time of this game too.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, well, Ross, you and I can just tag team, on that. I'll tag you in. I'm going with the Packers on this, not because anything with the scheduling of this game. The time is just so stupid. But I'm not. I'll wait to get into that for a second. All right, next one: Vikings minus 7.5 at Bears. Jesse, who you got?
I'll take the Vikings.
Okay. Ross.
Duh, Bears.
Okay.
I wouldn't be shocked if the Vikings lose. I just don't.
I
The
wouldn't.
game-
I just feel like Chicago wants to lose more than the Vikings even want to win. Like I just
Yeah.
think that passion
Great-
to lose is
great-
so much bigger.
Well
Great
said.
quasi fake Billy Bean almost quote there, Jesse
that?
Pierce. Yeah.
Thank you.
In
Well
fact,
said.
I hate losing more than I
More than
even
I
like
like
winning.
Winning, yes. God,
I'm
I love that movie.
gonna go with the Vikings because the Bears, they don't want to win that game. Okay, over under 43.5. Jesse, who do you like?
Over.
Or over under? Okay, you're going over.
Sure.
Ross.
Oh, that's tough. That field's always crappy. It's late in the year, but yeah, I guess I'll try and hold on to my number 2 spot and just salvage it, and I'll also follow Jesse and take the over.
Okay, I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna go under for that one.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Okay, and that's it for Thor's Hammers today.
Beautiful job, well done. Let's just remind our audience of the stats, and for those that are maybe just listening,
they already
can
saw
say
it
them
once.
out loud just to let Jesse is number 1. That's all I needed. That's good. We don't need to finish the rest of it.
This is how much of a segue master and show host you've become, Jesse. When you said, let's just remind everybody,
Yes,
I so thought you were going to start talking about our crazy Canadian Cousins Crusaders.
well, now you jumped in ahead of that. I had a better
That's what
segue
she
for that,
should have
but
said.
here we go.
I know, but that's what I'm getting at, is you do such a good job that I thought that was going to be it, and that wasn't it.
That wasn't it. Because more importantly, I wanted to remind people of me being number 1 and Thor not. So that's priority. Priority number 2 of mine is to make a donation on behalf of the Crazy Canadian Cousins Crusaders of Purple Daily. We've been talking about these guys for a couple weeks now. A great group of Kirk Cousins fans who have reached out to us here at Purple Daily, wanting to do something good to celebrate the very fun Minnesota Vikings season. We are all about that here at Purple Daily. Make a donation to Kirk Cousins or charity at kirkcousins.org. Donate whatever you can on behalf of the Cousins Crusaders of Purple Daily. Ross, did you make a matching donation? Did you get
Pat in Oak Grove? I won't give away a last name because I don't think Oak Grove's a very big town, but Pat in Oak Grove, Minnesota, thank you for reaching out. And yes, that was matched.
And thank you, Ross, for making that matching donation. Again, go to kirkcousins.org, click the donate button, whatever you can donate on behalf. Mention it is on behalf of the Cousins Crusaders of Purple Daily. We appreciate all of you. We appreciate our crazy Canadian Cousins Crusaders up there having us be a part of this.
And
Nice of Pete to do that.
Yes, and thanks. Wouldn't that be something? And thanks to Pat for making a donation and reaching out. So awesome stuff.
Exactly.
Let's do good in this world, people.
Yes, let's do more good. Let's hear some of our comments from YouTube. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it.
Comments from YouTube.
I lined up some good ones for you. They're always good, but I feel pretty good about these ones today. First comment comes from Mike J. Teams have lost games 49-24 and 23-10 at the end of the season and still won a Super Bowl. The Green Bay loss is meaningless. My question to you two, long term, does Mike have a point? Could the loss indeed become meaningless at some point?
No, because it's Green Bay. It's your rival. Like you take each game as a fresh slate, right? You always, especially once you enter the playoffs too, everything restarts. You hit anew. You don't let bad blood carry over, but it's your rival. That's never going to be meaningless. A loss to Green Bay never not holds something. That was a terrible grammatically imposed sentence. I apologize for that. But it always means something. You never want to lose to Green Bay. In the grand scheme of the record, yes, of course you can go still win a Super Bowl and that loss be just a small blemish, but it's not a small blemish because it's Green Bay. That's my take anyway, from that perspective.
I mean, yeah, Mike's correct in that, like, for playoff positioning and stuff like that, it is meaningless. In fact, I wanted to lose that game for playoff positioning, like I said, because I want to play the Giants in round one. What is meaningful is losing all the offensive linemen. That's the thing that carries over to the playoffs. That's something that is actually going to affect the Vikings' odds of winning playoff games. The Packer loss thing doesn't matter at all for that.
Yeah, I'll agree with you both. You always want to beat Green Bay. Would have been great to keep them out of the playoffs. In the long run, though, if you go farther than Green Bay or you maybe go to a Super Bowl and win it, and they obviously don't, then you had a much more successful season than they do. Yes. So in that prism, it can become a meaningless loss, and let's all hope that that happens. Comment from Joshua Bunkers. By the way, Joshua, if you know an Annie, please tell her I say hello. We are cooked at center, right guard and right tackle. We are cooked. Cooked! In a joking tone. Okay, I'm saying this in a joking tone. Should we even watch the playoff games?
Nah.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. Of course, Ross. I mean, the pain, right? Like
The pain.
do I expect it to go well now? The run with the offensive line and the straights it's in? No, I don't particularly. That we already knew what the defense was, and now the offensive line has been blown up. But of course, you're going to watch it and hoping that they draw the Giants in round one. I think the Vikings have a decent shot to get into round two, even with the straights that the offensive line is in. Am I confident beyond that? Not particularly, but I also want to say all these people crapping on the Vikings. The Vikings are going to finish 13-4. They won the division. They're, either whether it's round one home playoff game or whether round two. And by the way, they could go further. It's just with the straights that the roster is in right now, you have to be pessimistic about that. But either way, super successful season. So don't listen to the people out there that are like crapping on the Vikings every single week. This was way better than anyone thought it was going to be this season. And the thing that couldn't happen happened, and that could affect things in the playoffs. But it was a fun season nonetheless, and certainly going to be watching the playoff game. And I'm happy to get my heart ripped out again. I'm ready for it.
Hey, I'll tell you this, in my best late 90s, maybe early 2000s, Jim Fossil, I always forget what season it was, former coach of the New York Giants. Might have been the season they actually beat the Vikings 41 donut in the NFC Championship game. Jim said, this team is going to the playoffs. I'm moving all my chips to the center of the table. This Minnesota Vikings team, somehow, some way, is going to the NFC Championship game. So yes, watch the playoffs.
Do you guys want to watch it together, or are you guys just going to hang out alone with each other?
I actually typically watch, unless I'm at a Gopher game, I typically watch all Gopher football games and Vikings games alone by myself, pacing back and forth because of the anxiety.
Yeah, I'm in for the watch party. But yeah,
I believe one audience member suggested the tavern in Woodbury, if I recall.
Oh, great spot. Great spot.
Ross can tell you what it's like to watch football games with me. Just watch. I flail a lot. There's a lot of expletives shouted and stuff like that. As long as you're prepared for that, I'm in.
I'm there for the beer.
Final comment, and we could have a new segment alert. Comment from My Worthless Opinion on YouTube. Jesse needs a grinds my gears segment every episode. I don't disagree. Jesse, what's grinding your gears today?
The GD snow, man. I'm telling you. I live in Minnesota. You get it. This is in an insane amount of snow. Like, I am getting stuck. I love my Jeep. I got 4-wheel drive. It's a beautiful thing. It broke a shovel. It broke my snow blower. I can't get out of my driveway. The snowplow keeps piling more snow up at the end of my driveway. And I have places to go. I got things to do. That's what's grinding my gears. I don't like to complain about the weather here because, again, we're all in this love-hate relationship with our fair state of Minnesota. We know what to expect. I honestly cannot remember the last time we had this much snow, and we're only in the beginning of January. That's what's grinding my gears right now.
For everybody in Minnesota, here's what I can tell you based off of a stat that I heard this morning. Average snowfall during the snow season, whatever that's defined as in Minnesota, the last 30 years, is 52 total inches. As of today, we're at 48.
Yeah.
Half of the snow season is still to come. We are going way over. If this was in Thor's hammers, we'd all be hammering the over on 52 inches
Except
of snow.
Thor, because he wouldn't get it right.
Yeah, he'd get it. He'd definitely get it wrong. Thor, I think you and I are going to have a very similar Before We Die, so maybe Jesse should kick us off. But first,
time now for the Before We Die crew to give us their Before We Dies.
Oh, geez. And I had one, and then I kind of wasted it on the grind my gears thing. So I was going to say, before we die, I will find some nice local neighborhood boys to shovel my driveway for me. But let's switch it up. Let's go with before I die, I will understand that carbs don't need to be a vital importance of my life. This isn't a New Year's resolution thing, ladies and gentlemen. It is just a new year, new me thing, which is different, I think. I have given up Taco Bell, which is very heartbreaking. I can't have bread. All I want is a piece of bread. It's been 3 days of no bread and no carbs and working out, and I'm not skinny yet, and it really hurts my feelings. And that's where I'm at with life. So one day I will understand that I don't need carbs. It's just not today.
What are you giving up Taco Bell for? It'd be like me giving up Chipotle.
I know.
Ain't
It's
gonna
going to
happen.
really hurt the sponsorship that I've been working so diligently on. My new brand has been, because I cannot tell you how many people reach out to me about hockey and Taco Bell. That is apparently the brand that I have established for myself. And I'm quite proud of that. But I'm also like, that's very sad. But here we are.
Let's all be honest, Jesse, because we're all shameless to a degree. When Taco Bell backs up that Brinks truck for the endorsement fee, you'll be heading back to Taco Bell.
I mean, absolutely. There was people, I had like 20 people send me, I think it was down in Arizona, they do like a Taco Bell drop, like Taco Bell drops a ball for New Year's Eve. It's like this whole thing. And everybody was sending this to me. I'm like, is this what you think of me? Like, just, it's cute. I like it. I appreciate it. It's just
Bring back the grilled stuffed burrito, Taco Bell. What's the wait for? Why'd you take it off? It's one of the best things on your menu.
Are they still doing breakfast too? Is that still a thing?
I think I get the same boring ass.
Yeah, the Pete Davidson ad is on the football game like all the time. You can't get rid of it. He's talking about the crunchy breakfast something or other.
This is how starved I am for Taco Bell. Last night, the Minnesota Wild hosted the Tampa Bay Lightning, and for whatever reason, they abbreviated Tampa Bay as TB on the scoreboard, and I was like, oh, Taco Bell. And that's like...
Just get yourself some Taco Bell today, would you?
Let's see.
Come.
Thor, what do you got? I think you should just go and I'll chime in where I want to because I think we have the exact same one.
Yeah, I mean, we got the NFL scheduling for the week 18 is utter BS. And on the NFC side, we got BS going on two ends of it. The Vikings not playing at the same time as the 49ers is utter BS. Why do they have to play before the 49ers? The 49ers game, the result of that, it's super indicative of what the Vikings would do in their game. If you want to be fair, just put them at the same time. I'm not saying the 49ers have to play first, but the fact that you make the Vikings play first when the Vikings game would be meaningless if the 49ers just hold serve and beat the Cardinals, you assume that the 49ers are going to do that and beat the Cardinals. But why should you give the 49ers a quasi bye if the Vikings ended up losing and then the 49ers could do that? Those games should be at the same time. The even bigger BS one is it was the NFL putting the Detroit Green Bay game as the night game. Like, so you have this scenario where Green Bay's in if they win. And obviously this is a big game. So like in some ways I understand it, like there's a lot of intrigue there, whatever, but Detroit gets eliminated if Seattle wins. Detroit only gets in if Seattle loses and then Detroit beats Green Bay. But the Seattle game is before that. What a gift the NFL has given to Green Bay. After a myriad of gifts over the years that the NFL has given to Green Bay, you give them another one. Could the NFL want anything more than for the Green Bay Packers to be in the playoffs? Because if Seattle ends up winning their game, now all of a sudden Detroit has zero incentive in that way. Like you've taken away all the chutzpah that they have for that game. They're going to be deflated. Green Bay probably just roll out the ball and win that game and get into the playoffs. It's a bunch of BS.
But you could play spoiler. You could be like, we hate Green Bay though, so I don't want you to do that.
Well, I hope Dirty Dan Campbell, he's got some pride and he goes in there regardless and they stun the Packers and get them out.
I can't believe I'm saying this. I really can't. In the last couple of years, I've become, I would say, I support all the teams in town, right? So I've been to a handful of Loons games. I've paid more attention to Loons. I don't necessarily think that everything soccer does is great and that we should all bow down to soccer in this country. But what I will say, the MLS does something that's brilliant and the NFL should adopt it too. The MLS calls their final day of the season Decision Day, and every game is played at the same time across the country.
Yeah.
Why the NFL doesn't just say every game starts at 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock on the West Coast, or however you want to do it. Stick every game in the middle of the day. And to Thor's point, yeah, I think we have a lot of fun with the fact that the NFL seems to love to rig things for the Packers.
Yeah.
We have a lot of fun with it because stuff like this happens. The easy out here, even though it might not be as big of a draw, the Titans and Jaguars are playing to get to the playoffs. Why is that not the Sunday night game? That's a win and in. Somebody's going to win and get a home playoff game. Somebody's going to lose and their season's over, and it doesn't run the risk of a no competition game like Thor's talking about. The NFL just loves to do stuff that gets in their own way and gets people PO'd, but here we are talking about it, which they also love. But yeah,
if you want to treat in Green Bay as the night game that night, you have to have the Seattle, Los Angeles, the Rams game, or you have to play it at the same time. You can't just arbitrarily give competitive advantages to certain franchises. That's what you're doing here by the scheduling of these games. They're not locked in before the season. Somebody's choosing to do this, and you've given a competitive advantage to Green Bay. It's BS, and the Vikings sort of get the short end of the stick. Not sort of. They are being given the short end of the stick here as well.
Use it as motivation for that NFC Championship run that I called earlier in this pod.
There you go.
I like it. Good job, boys. You still
do better, NFL.
Also, did Thor use Chupsta or Chupsta?
Chutzpah.
Yeah, you remind me, like I said this in this week's episode, but every time I just listen, you know the scenes wherever Charlie's in Always Sunny is pretending to be a lawyer? It was hard times. Like, that's what you said. And I mean that in the best way because I love him. I love that show, and it's just so great. Like, I'm waiting for you to bust out like kitten mittens or something like that.
If I ever need a lawyer and I can't get any of my two standing lawyers to help me, I'm just going to have Thor show up in a suit and just start throwing around big words the entire time.
Call Thor or Nystrom. 877 takes now.
Oh, you guys. Well, should we wrap it up for those who probably are still listening? Again, this is Purple Dailies Before We Die, brought to you by Score North. I'm Jesse Pierce. He's Thor Nystrom. He's Ross Brendel, bringing you content Mondays and Thursdays, all about the Minnesota Vikings, having some fun in between. Again, be sure to go check out the rest of Purple Dailies content. Lots of good stuff. Fun season to follow along. I hate that we're going to have to apologize to Thor Ross later on when the season concludes because we have to. I hold myself to a high accountability standard. We're going to have to. That's going to be the worst thing of my 2023. And so that's going to do it. We'll see you guys next Monday. Go Vikings.
Skol Vikings.
Sure is awfully cold and snow-filled in Hennepin County.